When you see gameplay of Half-Life 2, do you feel some type of way? Does your brain give off a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling, or rather a strange range of emotions, happy, sad, or even lonely? Personally, I feel a sense of nostalgia, even though I never really played the game growing up, until I got the orange box for Xbox 360 was when I got my first experience playing games on the Source engine. Even with the older games like the original Half-Life, a game developed on an earlier version of the Source engine known as Gold Source. For those of you that might not have an idea of what exactly the Source engine is, here's a brief history to help you get an idea. The Source engine is a game engine developed by Valve back in 2004. As I mentioned before, the Source engine is an updated version of their previous engine known as Gold Source, which the team had developed back in 1996. Upon release, the Source engine featured two new IPs, Half-Life 2, the sequel to Half-Life, and Counter-Strike Source, an official game based off the Counter-Strike mod back on the original Half-Life game. And personally, I prefer CS Source over CSGO due to the simplicity of the game, and to me, the sniping just feels a tad bit better. But don't let this dismiss the fact that you can still catch the work on CSGO if you want it. But since I didn't have a PC back then, and because I was 4 years old, I didn't get a chance to experience these games with everyone else when they first were released to the public. However, when I was around 11 or so, that's when I got my first PC capable of playing a couple games. And around this time, Vanoss Gaming was at his peak, and playing Gmod with his buddies, and that alone inspired me to play Gmod. So basically, Gmod was my first Source game, and even back then playing it for the first time, I remember the feeling of nostalgia I got while playing. Back then, I only ever fooled around with my friends on Dark RP, Prop Hunt.
What the fuck you gonna do about it, dumb shit? Report me then,
I'm gonna report you, I'm gonna report
and private servers that we would set up using Hamachi. And if you know what Hamachi is, then you can consider yourself an OG, because that software is more than irrelevant nowadays, especially since you can just invite your buddies to your Gmod game through Steam now, something that wasn't possible back then. When I played alone, I would just mess around in sandbox mode and fool around with the insane mods that I downloaded. And I vividly remember the sense of familiarity I had while playing that was almost nostalgically soothing in a way, because this was my first time in life where I was still young, so I didn't really have anything to feel nostalgic over, since in my eyes, I was still in the good days. But I still didn't understand why I felt like that. But it wasn't until I'd gotten older and lived more life that I was able to figure out why that game made me feel the way it did. So I'd recommend you sit back, relax, grab a snack or two, and let's explore why Source games feel so nostalgic. As I mentioned previously, my first experience with a Source game was Gmod, but I may have told a little white lie. You see, technically Left 4 Dead was the first Source game I had actually played back when I was 9 or 10 years old. But at the time, I didn't know what the game engines really were or cared about it since it wasn't too important to me at the time. But when I played Gmod, I kinda knew what I was in for. A sandbox RPG that was based off a mod that was created for Half-Life 2 and eventually got its own standalone game. And because it was originally a mod for Half-Life 2, I kinda connected the dots that the game also ran on the same engine. Note that at the time, I still haven't played Half-Life 2 yet. I remember opening the game up on my PC for the first time and spawning into GM Construct, exploring the map and its few secrets, and just taking in that desolate but lively atmosphere. If you don't know what I'm saying, there are plenty of videos that discuss the loneliness that Source games give off, and go into detail about why some people feel this way while playing. I've heard some refer to a phenomena called canopsia, a word as described from the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows to mean the eerie, forlorn atmosphere of a place that's usually bustling with people but is now abandoned and quiet. A school hallway in the evening, an unlit office on a weekend, vacant fairgrounds, an emotional afterimage that makes it seem not just empty, but hyper-empty. A prime example of this phenomena is the not-so-current trend of backrooms content, and I'm fairly certain almost everyone that is watching this video is aware of what the backrooms is. It's an eerie space that seemed endless, void of life, until people started adding monsters to the lore, and most importantly, familiar, almost as if you've been here before. Whether it be at a doctor's office that had a very familiar layout and design choice, or even to the extent that some people said they've even dreamt themselves being there before ever even coming into contact with the original photo. Another example I know not a lot of people can relate to, but even Minecraft. Yes, Minecraft. If you felt this feeling before, then you know exactly what I mean. When I was younger, I actually used to get scared of playing specifically Minecraft Java by myself because I had no one else to play with, so I had no choice but to play the game alone, and I would always feel like something was in the game just watching me. Now I'm not talking about Herobrine or creepers creeping up behind me. No, I was afraid of some surreal creature just popping out at me and scaring the fuck out of me. So to get over this fear, whenever I played Java Edition, I used to play Tobuscus Minecraft videos on a Google Chrome tab, because hearing someone else play Minecraft while I was playing gave me a false sense of security. I don't feel like that too much now because I know that nothing is going to happen, and at worst I might get spooked by a random mob popping out at me, but I still get that sense of creeped out feeling that I used to when I was younger. But as I mentioned before, that feeling isn't as strong. I honestly blame this mindset I had due to the fact that I would watch a ton of scary videos on YouTube back when jump scares were all over the place, and when PewDiePie was in his horror game prime. However, that feeling of canopsia is exactly the feeling I used to get when playing Gmod solo, even till this day. It's just something about exploring a massive hotel with furnished rooms but it's entirely vacant, or walking around the downtown map used for Dark RP and there's no one in sight. Think of the first Portal game. You start off in a glass box with the sounds of the lights humming overhead, the radio playing some tunes, and a robot giving you some complex and deadly puzzles to solve. And as you walk around Aperture Science, you start to notice signs of life and that people used to be working there, but now it's completely abandoned. But it can't be abandoned because the AI is clearly up and running, so what's really going on? Don't get an answer. And as I've gotten older, that canopsia feeling eventually turned from an eerie, uneasy feeling to something of a nostalgic, soothing feeling, especially when being combined with the Source Engine's beautiful visual style. For a game engine that was created back when the GameCube, PS2, and original Xbox was the wave, it was just like the consoles I mentioned before, as well as a lot of the titles on those consoles have all aged beautifully. You know what else a lot of these games and consoles give off? That's right, a huge wave of nostalgia, even for those that didn't grow up playing those systems. Me and my buddies discussed that a lot, and I believe the reason behind this was because gaming from the year 2000 to about 2014 was peak. This was back when we had the equilibrium of amazing graphics and solid gameplay, and not one overshadowing the other. Allow me to elaborate. Nowadays it seems game devs really only care about two things: how visually appealing they can make their game, as well as how much money they can make off of it before it dies off. Now I know the latter is more of a problem because of greedy publishing companies like Activision Blizzard, but it's the sad truth. Only a few game devs pay attention to the actual thing gamers really care about: gameplay and story. The two forgotten arts of creating video games. I'd hate to play devil's advocate here, but from a business standpoint, I can't really blame them for the state that gaming's in, and rather I shift the blame more to us gamers ourselves. I mean, if I can get away with selling you a dog turd with sprinkles on it to make it look pretty, and my consumers eat that shit up, then why would I take the time to make you a proper ice cream when I know you'll still buy the product even after complaining about it? That is exactly what they do, and like I said, it's not their fault. Business is business, and it's not meant to be fair. Besides, the target market that they're aiming for doesn't really care about certain aspects of gaming like a good story, gameplay mechanics, and replayability. They'd rather have a game that looks visually stunning but plays like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That's also another reason as to why we're starting to see more multiplayer games and solo games, because it's easier and it produces more revenue to make a pretty looking multiplayer game with microtransactions than it is to make a game with an amazing single player experience. Just look at GTA Online. I bet about a third of the updates released for GTA Online was supposed to be single player content, like maybe the casino and that Franklin update, but rather because GTA Online was a money printing machine, they basically probably just figured out a way to make it online content instead, since it'd be able to make them more money via shark card purchases than it would have been if it was strictly released for story mode. I believe that the true meaning why Source games feel so nostalgic is not because of the canopsia effect they give off, but rather because it reminds us of the era of gaming where we had games with amazing graphics, maybe not too realistic like the games we have nowadays, but also not polygonal sharp objects like we did back when 3D gaming first hit the scene with the N64 and PlayStation. We also had solid gameplay allowing years of replayability even today. I mean, I still play Fallout New Vegas and games like Jet Set Radio Future till this day on emulators. I even own the original consoles to make sure I can play those games if I want to. And as far as I can see it, as long as gaming heads in the direction that it's currently heading, games like this, from that previous era of gaming, will always give us that feeling of nostalgia and continue to live on in our hearts for the years to come. How's it going, everyone? I hope you enjoyed today's video. I wanted to do something a little different this Friday than the character files or Left 4 Dead content that I usually do, because I don't really want to drain myself out on it yet, and I don't want to just bombard you guys with the same content. I like to spice it up a little bit. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like to show your support, and if you're new around here, click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. And if you have time to check out some of my older videos, you should do so. As always, it's your man Lost Disciple, the voice box of the underground of YouTube, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.
Color television, fan on the ceiling, abstract art on the walls, living different. 1989, talking on the phone, wind blowing hard, all the windows closed. Turquoise sheets, pink pillows, Motel 6, that's room 24. Meet you in the morning, meet me here tonight. Vibrating bed, gotta say it all right. Black marble sink, gold in the faucet, fresh bar soap, many shampoo bottles. Playing some Atari, she blowing on my cartridge. Room service knocking, I can hear him at the door. Do not disturb, hanging